Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've been in the towing business for 15 years now, building my company from a single truck to the largest tow operation in the county. We handle most of the police department contracts for accidents and impounds in the area. Last night was quite eventful. I got called out around midnight for a rollover accident about 20 miles from my office. Single car incident, nothing too complicated, but it meant driving out to the county's biggest city. After loading up the totaled vehicle onto my flatbed, I started the drive back, planning to get at least a few hours of sleep before handling the paperwork in the morning. That's when things got interesting. I was cruising down this two-lane highway, speed limit 55, when I came across this car going maybe 40 miles per hour. The driver kept drifting toward the shoulder, then back toward the center line. At first, I figured maybe they were tired, but then I noticed something through their rear window. The height of my truck gave me a perfect view of the driver taking swigs from what looked suspiciously like a bottle. I called dispatch and explained the situation, telling them my location on Highway 27 and describing the silver sedan weaving in front of me. When they asked about the driving behavior, I described how the car was going well under the speed limit and drifting between the shoulder and center line, plus the drinking I'd witnessed. Dispatch asked if I could maintain visual while keeping a safe distance, and I assured them I could, mentioning the totaled car on my flatbed that was already keeping me at a good following distance. A few minutes later, I spotted the police lights in my mirror. The officer was the same one I just worked with at the accident scene. As he came up behind us, I flipped on my warning lights to signal I was involved. The officer started to pass on the left when suddenly the car in front of me slammed on their brakes. My heart jumped into my throat as I hit my air brakes hard. The load on my flatbed shifted slightly and I barely avoided rear-ending them. Thankfully, the officer had already moved into the opposite lane and managed to get around us. Now we're crawling along at maybe 10 miles per hour. The officer positioned his cruiser at an angle in front of the car, forcing them to stop. I pulled up about 2 car lengths back, also at an angle to protect the scene from any oncoming traffic. As I walked up the shoulder toward the officer's car, this woman burst out of her vehicle like a tornado. She immediately started screaming that I was stalking her and had followed her from the pub. I quickly pointed out to the officer that this was impossible since I'd been with him at the accident scene 20 miles away. The officer confirmed this to her and asked her to calm down, but she wasn't having it. Instead, she started berating the officer, telling him he was useless and reminding him that she paid his salary. She even called him her servant and demanded he arrest me for stalking. A second officer pulled up behind my truck and I stepped back to direct traffic around the scene. Meanwhile, this woman was putting on quite a show. When the officer tried to conduct a sobriety test, she claimed it was harassment and insisted she knew her rights. The officer tried to get her to follow his finger with her eyes, but she refused, accusing them of trying to help her supposed stalker. After failing the field sobriety test spectacularly, they brought out the breathalyzer. She blew a 0.12, well over the legal limit. That's when things really got wild. As soon as the handcuffs came out, this woman transformed into some kind of escape artist covered in butter. The officers struggled to keep hold of her as she twisted and squirmed. It took both of them about 5 minutes to finally get her properly cuffed and secured. The first officer approached me with a grin and asked if I wanted to add another car to my collection tonight. I happily agreed and had her car loaded up on my wheel lift in no time, making it my second tow of the night. But the story doesn't end there. This afternoon I was woken up by my office staff calling about our friend from last night. She'd shown up demanding her car, apparently not realizing there's a mandatory 12-hour hold on vehicles from DUI arrests in our county. When they told her she'd have to wait another hour, she threw another tantrum. She started yelling that it was illegal and threatening to sue everyone. When my dispatcher explained it was county policy and not ours, she demanded to speak to a manager. My dispatcher told her I was resting after working a late-night call and she'd need to wait for the hold to expire. That's when she realized I owned the place and started ranting about calling her lawyer. She stormed out only to return exactly 1 hour later. The impound fee, plus the mandatory hold fee, came to a pretty penny. Watching her face as she read the bill was almost worth getting woken up early. Almost. I've been working hospital security for about 5 years now. After spending some time as a deputy in another state, I decided to switch to something a bit more structured. The pay is decent and honestly, the night shift suits me. Less drama, usually. Well, usually being the key word here. I work at our local hospital in what I'll call Looserton. The night shift runs from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and most nights involve dealing with homeless folks trying to get some sleep in the rooms. Given the current health situation, the nursing staff isn't too keen on that anymore. But they're not our biggest problem. That honor belongs to our regular visitor, who I'll just call Karen. This woman, probably in her late 80s, has made it her life's mission to be the most difficult patient possible. She always arrives by ambulance, stays for about 3 hours, gets discharged, and then refuses to leave. Her favorite catchphrase is that she can't walk because she doesn't have kneecaps. Sure, she uses a cane, but that doesn't stop her from walking when she wants to, only when she's asked to leave. This night, it was pouring rain and Karen had arrived soaking wet and completely drunk. If regular Karen was difficult, drunk Karen was like dealing with a Category 5 hurricane of entitlement. When one of our nurses went to check her vitals, and our tech tried to give her hospital scrubs to change into, she immediately started causing problems. She began screaming that she wouldn't let any male near her, claiming she had been assaulted earlier that night. Fair enough, the staff accommodated that request, but then she started arguing that she couldn't change into the scrubs because she had no kneecaps. When the nurse insisted she needed to put on the clothes, Karen just kept repeating that she couldn't possibly do it without kneecaps. This went on for a while, with her basically refusing to wear anything. Yes, you heard that right. She'd rather flash the entire emergency room than admit she could bend her knees. Later that night, I was watching a high-risk patient when I heard the commotion start up again. Karen had received her discharge papers, and boy, she wasn't happy. Before I could even get there, she'd thrown her cane at one of our best nurses. That's an automatic call to local law enforcement. Within minutes, 4 police cars pulled up. The lead officer walked in casually, heard the screaming, and just sighed. He asked if it was Karen again, and when I confirmed, he just shook his head. He walked straight to her room and loudly ordered her to leave before she ended up in jail. Karen responded with her usual litany of excuses. She'd been assaulted, she couldn't walk, couldn't bend her knees, couldn't get her pants on. The officer pointed out that he'd seen her walking just 6 hours ago, questioning why she was acting this way. That's when Karen made the mistake of calling him a liar. Now, I know from my deputy days that you can call an officer many things. Pig, jerk, coward. But calling them a liar? That's when things get interesting. The officer challenged her statement, asking if she was suggesting that his body camera, dash cam, and rear dash camera were all lying. Karen tried to clarify that she wasn't saying the cameras were lying, but rather that the officer himself was a liar. They gave her one last chance. Leave voluntarily or face trespassing and disorderly conduct charges. When she refused, all 4 officers went into the room, handcuffed her, and managed to get a hospital gown on her for basic decency. They bagged up her belongings and escorted her out. As I was finishing my shift, I walked past the ambulance entrance and saw her in the back of the police car, head down, muttering to herself while the officers were having a good laugh about their next assignment. I found out later that what was supposed to be a 48-hour hold turned into much more. They were working on getting a warrant for repeated trespassing and harassment of hospital employees. Apparently, the security footage of her throwing the cane at the nurse was the last straw. She's been banned from the hospital except for genuine life-threatening emergencies, and she's facing multiple charges. Turns out she did have kneecaps after all, and now she's got some ankle bracelets to go with them. I've been playing Roblox for about 3 years now, mainly because my younger sister got me into it. While most people think it's just for kids, I actually find some of the games pretty entertaining, especially Jailbreak. It's basically a cops and robbers simulation where you can choose to play as either a police officer or a criminal. I usually pick the police role. That specific day after finishing my college assignments, I decided to unwind with some Jailbreak. I've been having a good run, arresting several criminals who were trying to rob various locations in the game. My character had earned quite a reputation on the server for being an effective officer. I was about to arrest another criminal when this random player approached me. What followed was both amusing and frustrating. The player started by threatening to contact the creator of Jailbreak if I didn't stop arresting criminals. I simply told them to go ahead, since that's literally how the game is meant to be played. When I continued arresting more criminals, they grew increasingly agitated. They revealed their true motives. They wanted to buy a car and asked if they could have my key card, an item that police officers carry which criminals can steal to access certain areas. This player wasn't even trying to roleplay as a criminal. They were straight up asking me to give them my key card. When I expressed my confusion, they just kept repeating their threats about contacting the creator while demanding I stop arresting criminals. They even escalated to claiming their uncle worked for the creator, to which I sarcastically responded that my aunt invented the internet. This sent them into a rage. They started spamming the chat with threats about getting my account banned and how I was ruining everyone's fun. When I continued making arrests, they began following my character around, jumping in front of me whenever I tried to arrest someone, and even attempted to block me with their vehicle. That's when I remembered the game's feature for recording evidence of players breaking rules. While they were harassing me and trying to prevent me from playing properly, I started recording. Just as they had managed to gather a small group of criminals who were all complaining about me doing my job, I submitted the evidence to the game moderators. Within minutes, the entitled player disappeared from the server. They had been kicked out and temporarily banned for harassment. The remaining players actually started uploading in the chat, and one even switched to the police team to join me. I later received a message from the game moderators confirming that the player had received a 3-day ban for attempting to disrupt normal gameplay. Sometimes I share this story with new players who try similar tactics, and occasionally I even get to hear their own encounters with entitled players who think they can change the rules of the game just because they want an easier time stealing cars and robbing banks. I've always had severe anxiety, and being naturally introverted made school feel like navigating a minefield. My parents had always emphasized academic excellence, and I threw myself into studying as a way to cope with my social awkwardness. When I got accepted into one of the prestigious grammar schools in the UK, they were overjoyed. I thought maybe things would be different there. Maybe I'd finally find my place among other academically minded students. I was wrong. From the first week, this one guy, let's call him the bully, zeroed in on me like a heat-seeking missile. Maybe it was because I was smaller than everyone else, or because I'd answer questions in class without hesitation. Whatever the reason, I became his favorite target. At first, it was the usual stuff. He'd try to trip me in the hallways, knock my books out of my hands, or make snide comments about my height. I would politely ask him to stop, but he'd just mock me, asking if I was scared of a little fun and calling me a baby. The worst part was when he'd try to copy my work. I spent hours studying, making sure every assignment was perfect, and he'd just lean over, trying to peek at my answers. When I confronted him about his cheating, he tried to guilt-trip me, saying we were classmates and should help each other out, calling me selfish. Friend? The irony wasn't lost on me. I developed strategies to avoid him. The library became my sanctuary during breaks. I'd eat lunch with sympathetic teachers who'd let me hide out in their classrooms. I tried to keep my head down, telling myself it would eventually stop, but it didn't. 2 years of this constant torment wore me down. I got good at hiding my tears, ducking into bathroom stalls when it became too much. But everything changed one Friday afternoon when he crossed a line that would ultimately lead to his downfall. I was gathering my books after class when he cornered me by the lockers. He called me a runt and said he had a special surprise for me. Before I could react, he grabbed me and started shoving me toward an open locker. I begged him not to do it, reminding him that he knew about my claustrophobia. He just laughed, saying that's exactly what made it funny. I fought back, but he was stronger. In the struggle, his elbow caught my nose. I felt the crunch and the warm flow of blood, but he didn't stop. He managed to force me in and slam the door. The darkness closed in immediately. I couldn't breathe. The walls felt like they were crushing me. I screamed and sobbed, my voice echoing in the metal chamber. I don't know how long I was in there before a teacher found me, but it felt like hours. The teacher was horrified when she found me, asking who had done this to me. I was too hysterical to speak, but everyone knew who it was. He got suspended for a week. My nose healed, but something in me changed. The teacher's empty promises of, "We'll keep an eye on him," weren't enough anymore. I needed to do something different. My opportunity came in mathematics class. One of his closest friends was struggling with algebra, and fate placed him next to me. He expressed his frustration, wondering aloud how I made it look so easy. I simply offered to show him. Over the next few weeks, I helped him understand the concepts he was struggling with. His grades improved dramatically, and to my surprise, he started helping me with art class in return. We actually became friends. This friend started inviting me to hang out with their group during breaks. I made sure to be extra friendly to everyone, including the bully. I never mentioned the locker incident or any of his past behavior. I just smiled and acted like everything was fine. Then came my masterpiece, the study groups. I suggested we all study together in the library, offering to help with math, while proposing we could help each other with other subjects too. The others immediately loved the idea, with one friend particularly excited about getting help with chemistry. I carefully arranged the schedules so they would never align with the bully's availability. Whenever he'd ask about joining, I'd make up excuses about having piano lessons or other commitments, always promising maybe next time. Months passed. The group's grades soared while the bully's plummeted. He couldn't copy answers anymore, and without his friends to help him, he was failing multiple subjects. Finally, he cornered me after class one day. He tried to apologize, asking if we could forget about everything. I told him my condition. He would have to apologize in front of his friends. He protested that it wasn't fair, but I told him those were my terms. He agreed, desperate to join our study group. At the next meeting, he stood up and apologized. That's when I sprung my trap. I questioned his motives, asking if he was apologizing because he was actually sorry, or because his grades were failing while we were all improving. His friends looked confused, asking what I meant, so I brought up the locker incident, the broken nose, and the 2 years of bullying. The room exploded with their reactions. One friend realized this was why I had missed a week of school the previous year. Another just kept repeating how messed up it all was. One by one, they all turned their backs on him. He tried to defend himself, but the damage was done. By the end of the week, he was eating lunch alone just like I used to. The next 2 years were the best of my school life. Our study group stayed strong, and we all graduated with excellent grades. The bully barely passed his exams and ended up repeating a year at a different school. Eventually, I got better grades, made real friends, and watched my tormentor destroy himself with his own actions. All I had to do was wait for the right moment and let karma do its thing. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.